Mitchell. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy day to meet with us again. I'd love to catch up with you, and we're here today to chat a little bit about your academic and your career pathway and what's led you to the role that you currently have. So would you like to kind of introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, happy to introduce myself. So my name is Mitchell. I graduated from the Accounting and Financial Management program at Waterloo. And I'm currently working at Brookfield in their private equity investments team as an associate.
Fantastic. You've had some fantastic experiences through your academic career, and I've had the opportunity and the pleasure of getting to know you and to work with you as a student, and now fantastic to meet up with you again as an alum to get to know what you're doing now. So I'd love to hear, and obviously we ran into each other at Convocation, but Convocation was just so busy and it was insanely warm.
Yeah.
So it was fantastic to catch up, but I'm glad that we had a chance to sit down. So I would love to chat a little bit about some of the memorable stories that you've had as a student in SAF. You've been so involved and so engaged as a student. Everything from the Student Investment Fund to the CFA Investment Research Challenge to not just attending, but also TAing the international study trip. So you've had some phenomenal experiences, as well as leading Hedge. I forgot, you led the Hedge conference as well. So I would love to hear some stories that you might have in terms of the experiences that you had as a student and how it's kind of led you to where you are now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and those are all really great experiences, and I think those are all big highlights of my university career. I think one that really stands out to me is the Hong Kong international trip. And so what that is, effectively it's a group of students, it's entirely student run, and it's a group of students that get the opportunity to go abroad and visit a country, for a week and talk to professionals in that kind of environment. And so for me, it was a very special opportunity because, I have family in Hong Kong, and growing up, I knew Hong Kong as a city that's kind of like my second home, but being able to go with the school and learn about real accounting and finance and meet people at a lot of these big firms, I got an appreciation for kind of how business is actually done. Not just in Hong Kong, but abroad. I think, it's very special. Toronto's a great city, but the world is a lot bigger than just Toronto. There's more to just the TDC or kind of, what we have here. I think, the world's really big. Understanding kind of how business is done outside of the country was a really big highlight for me. And I think, like being able to kind of plan the trip with a group of 12 students and then going there and seeing kind of the plan that you've prepared for a whole couple months play into, reality was certainly a big highlight for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not only did you get the opportunity to go to Hong Kong, experience that, speak with professionals, I believe the summer after you were also the TA for the international study trip, which then gave you the added layer and learning opportunity to also then lead the team and lead the class along with Professor Steve Balaban in terms of just building and using your experience to help the students build their experiences in organizing a trip to, I believe, that became a virtual trip,
yes,
right?
Yeah. That was an interesting one because we had planned the trip to go to Singapore originally. And then the world just changed in the span of a couple months, as a lot of us will remember. So I remember Steve and I, the professor that kind of leads the course, we were brainstorming how can we still make this course engaging for students, because the message is important. It's connecting students with, alumni or professionals outside of kind of the Toronto world, and really showing the world as well what a great school Waterloo is. And so, we were originally going to go, so we started off wanting to go to Singapore, had a whole plan in place. Then COVID hit. Then we wanted to transition to the UK because that's when the trip was originally, the first inaugural trip was done, and there's a lot of alum in UK. And then COVID spread to the UK, so we couldn't go there. And then we were like, okay, you know what, we might just do a local one in Toronto. You know, we have great alumni in Toronto, you know, and then Toronto shut down from COVID. And so we transitioned the whole thing into a virtual course, and it actually became a virtual trip for a couple of terms, and you know, students really enjoyed it. I think, you know, we were able to fit more kind of discussions with people virtually. Of course, you know, the experience is a little bit different, but at the end of the day, it's getting the students connected to our alumni, getting the students connected to kind of professionals outside of Toronto, and hearing their stories and learning about how business works internationally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great pivot story in terms of checking out all of your options and then finally pivoting to virtual, which ultimately I think was just as effective, because the virtual world opened up the international study trip students to being able to connect with not just the alums or professionals in Toronto or the UK or Singapore, but worldwide. Where I believe for that year, you guys ended up interviewing and having discussions and conversations with professionals and alums from everywhere from Hong Kong to UK to, I believe, New York City as well, right?
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, absolutely incredible and phenomenal learning opportunities for our students. And obviously, you were able to leverage both of those experiences and did exceedingly well. And but on top of that, also build not just your knowledge, but also a large number of connections with alums and helping you to build your acumen as well. So that's fantastic experience. Now that's obviously, to me, that's one of the bigger experiences that I remember in terms of you having. Another one that I thought that was just as impactful, but just as impactful is you leading the team for the CFA investment research competition. But I believe that all kind of culminated from your experience in being part of the student investment fund. So do you want to talk a little bit about the experiences of those two opportunities that you had?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, amazing that our school puts these programs or kind of extracurriculars in place for students. Like, you know, the investment fund is one where, you know, I got the opportunity to really work with a group of, call it 30 or 40 students, to run a portfolio of stocks. You know, we're using real money, we're working with the professors real time, and that really gave me an appreciation for, you know, getting some technical analysis in place, so understanding how to pick stocks, you know, from a more macro perspective. So the professors always teach us about value investing. And so that really formed a big part of how I think about investing today. And, you know, my role at Teachers, as well as in Brookfield and private equity, value investing is really important. And I think being on CIF gave me that opportunity, which ultimately led me to leading the CFA Research Challenge team. And so the CFA Research Challenge is really, you know, you can think of it like an 8-month-long stock pitch competition. It's not your average competition. It is one where, you know, requires more of a lift, but it's a great experience overall. And so we were assigned the company Descartes Systems Group, which is actually a local company in Waterloo, which really fit our school. And, you know, we were doing a whole research report first, and then had to present kind of our pitch to a panel of CFA judges. And along the way, we were mentored by an incredible faculty member, as well as an industry mentor. So that gave us, you know, real kind of feedback from people in the industry. And ultimately, we were able to, you know, really get our hands, really get in the weeds in terms of the research we did. I remember we were literally sending out cold emails or LinkedIn messages to industry experts to get asked about, you know, what their view of logistics is, what their view of software is. And, you know, they were really open to talking to us because we just said we were students from the University of Waterloo. We're doing this challenge, and oftentimes these people are very busy. But for us, you know, they had no issues talking with us and sharing their perspectives, which we were able to leverage into our pitch, and, you know, ultimately went through to the regionals and came out pretty far there, which was really great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're quite humble, Mitchell, but your team did do exceedingly well in terms of not just winning the regionals, but you went on to the North American finals as well. So kudos to you, and certainly the Professor Steve Balaban, again, leading your team, but with Janine Lee Chong, one of our SAF alums, also as an industry mentor for your team. So kudos and congratulations on how far you guys went.